Hi friends, it's Amy. Welcome to my channel. Today I am going to join the plethora of booktubers who are doing the mid-year freakout tag. Now I wanted to do this because it sounded like a lot of fun, and what a great way to think about all the reading I've been doing since January. So let's get to it. The mid-year freakout tag is 13 questions to get you thinking about all the books that you've read since January, your favorites, things that disappointed you, all of that kind of good stuff. So the first question is favorite book. My favorite book so far this year is Circus of Stolen Dreams by Lorelei Saverin. This book pulled on every heartstring that I have. I absolutely loved it. It dealt with grief. It dealt with family. It dealt with escaping. It was just so beautifully written that I made a whole video about how much I love it, and I'll attach it down below and you can find out more there. I read this in April and I still can't stop thinking about it. Number 2 is the best sequel. And the best sequel that I read is a little bit bittersweet to me because that is Wires and Nerves Going Rogue by Marissa Meyer. This is the second volume of the graphic novel continuation of the Lunar Chronicles. And I was so excited last year to find out that there was a graphic novel continuation of the Lunar Chronicles that I couldn't even handle it. I read the first one last year, and now I read the second and final one, and I'm very sad because I will not visit these characters for the first time ever again. That's sad. But also beautiful. I read that in February. Number 3 is a new release that you haven't read yet, but want to. That is The Newcomer by Mary Kay Andrews. This was released on May 4th. I made sure to get myself a copy, and I haven't read it yet. So I need to get on that. This follows Letty, who finds her sister dead in her apartment. And all Letty can think about is when her sister said to her, "If anything happens to me, it's Evan. Take Maya and run." It's a fabulous premise. So very excited to pick this up. Another one that I'm excited for is another Friends in Fiction author, and that is Surviving Savannah by Patty Callahan. This is a historical fiction about the sinking of the Pulaski in Savannah. What I love about this book is that Patty Callahan is just fabulous at writing characters. So you know there's going to be wonderful characters in this book. I know there's going to be wonderful characters in this book. And the idea of a Titanic of the South, I mean, I love the Titanic. Why wouldn't I love the Titanic of the South? Right? Okay. Number 4, this was released in March and I still haven't gotten to it. Anyway. Okay. Number 4 is most anticipated release in the second half of the year, and that is coming up very soon, July 6th, The Forest of Vanishing Stars by Kristen Harmel, another Friends in Fiction author. This takes place in World War II. A young woman is using her knowledge of the wilderness to help Jewish refugees escape the Nazis. I am so excited to read this book. I actually have an advanced reader copy, and I will be reading it very soon. Number 5 is your biggest disappointment. Again, I have 2 for this one. Number 1 is Better Together by Christine Riccio that I read in May. I just was expecting to like this one more than I did. It was not a bad book by any means. And there are definitely a lot of people out there that I think would really like this book. It just wasn't me. And the second one was The Brave by James Bird. I loved the premise of this book. I loved the idea of a young boy looking more into his roots. It just felt so old for a middle grade book. There was so much romance. There was so much inappropriate for a middle grade. I just couldn't get on board with this being a middle grade book, and it's dubbed as a middle grade book. And oh man. So I read this in March. It was the group pick. Many of us felt that same way, that it's not a middle grade book. But there were definitely parts that I liked about it. So I didn't hate it. Number 6, biggest surprise. My biggest surprise was Sourdough by Robin Sloan. I read this in March. It was the book club pick at the library. I was surprised by this book because I didn't have a huge desire to read it. I thought I would like it. What I've heard of it in the past. I thought I would like it. I didn't think that I would love it, and I really did. I loved it. But I was also surprised because this book sent me down so many rabbit holes, and I usually am kind of a rabbit hole reader where I come up to something in a book. I'm like, ooh, I need to look up more about that. I do that quite often, but this book sent me down so many rabbit holes. It was crazy. But I really liked it. What's it about? It's about a robotics engineer who doesn't have a whole lot of time on her own, and she doesn't have a lot of time to cook for herself, so usually she ends up getting takeout from this restaurant. One day the restaurant, the owners of the restaurant have to leave because there's an immigration problem. And they leave with her their sourdough starter, and they tell her that she has to feed it, she has to take care of it, and it becomes this character onto itself. She takes up the challenge of keeping this sourdough alive, and it's just really fun. I liked it. Number 7 is a new to me favorite author. I did pick 2 for this one as well. The first one I thought might be cheating. So I thought it's harder, and I came up with a second one. So I'll go with the second one first. So the second one, though, so number 1 then is Ellery Adams. I binge read all of this available Secret Book and Scone Society books by Ellery Adams in May. This little town, people go there to heal. So every business is like there to make you feel better. And it basically centers around Nora, who is the bookstore owner, and she does bibliotherapy, which is so fun. And it's wonderfully and delightfully bookish. I just love it. The whole series was so wonderfully bingeable and beautiful. Loved it. Absolutely. We'll look further into our other series. The first one that I thought of, though, was Sarah Addison Allen, who wrote The Peach Keeper that I read in April. I loved this book so much. It was intensely readable. It was I read it. I couldn't stop reading it. I thought it would take me a little bit to read it. I just didn't stop once I started. It was so good, and the characters were wonderful. We followed a girl whose family used to be rich, and then they lost all their money, and the estate that her family used to live on is being turned into a bed and breakfast. And as they are doing construction to do that, they find a skeleton, and the skeleton has probably been there since the day that her family owned the property. And it turns into this beautiful mystery. I just love it. Number 8 is a new fictional crush. The first one is from The Islanders by Mary Alice Monroe. I read this book in June. It just came out in June 6th. And it's a middle grade book, but one of the adult characters is absolutely wonderful. Best role model ever. Super take charge, do what needs to be done, cares for the whole community. And that is Chief Randall Piper. He is the fire chief on the small Dewey's Island. And just, oh, man, just, oh. The Islanders is about a young boy, Jake, who is, when his father is in the hospital, he's sent to live with his grandma over the summer on Dewey's Island. And he meets some other children that are there for the summer, and they form this wonderful friendship and this wonderful bond. And they have a bunch of adventures, a lot centering around turtle nests and things like that, which is very common in a Mary Alice Monroe book. I haven't read a ton of Mary Alice Monroe, but she's maybe one that's eking up into that favorite author status as well. Number 9 is a new favorite character, and that is Amari from Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. Amari is, let's start with the setup. So Amari is dealing with the fact that her brother disappeared. And everybody around her assumes that he disappeared because he just ran away. And she doesn't believe that. One day she gets a message from her brother inviting her to join a secret society. And she goes to check this out, and she decides that becoming part of the secret society can hold the answers to finding her brother. It's an absolutely wonderful story. I loved all of the magic in the world building that B.B. Alston created. It was just fabulous. And Amari is just a kick butt main character. She's devoted, loyal, determined. Everything about her is the kind of character I hope my students have. And I want to get this in their hands. Next, number 10 is a book that made me cry. And I did choose 2, even though there's so many options. Number 1 is The Truth is Told by Mason Buttle by Leslie Connor. This book was chosen for me by my students. I gave them 3 options, and they chose this one because they found out, because I told them, that this book was supposed to make me cry. One of my former students put it down and said, Miss Bowman, this book's going to make you cry. He was correct. It made me cry. I was tearing up within the first 4 chapters of the book. We have Mason Buttle, who is dealing with the fact that his very best friend in the world, who kind of centered him and grounded him, was found dead at the bottom of his treehouse, like Mason's treehouse. Because one day they were in the treehouse, they had to go somewhere. He jumped out of the treehouse and ran. His best friend was behind him, and then his best friend was missing. He went to the treehouse, and he found his best friend dead. And the police questioned him as if he had something to do with it. This is a kid who's grieving the loss of his best friend. It's sad. So sad. First 4 you don't actually see, at the beginning of the book, his best friend is already dead. I'm getting teary-eyed just thinking about it. He meets a new friend at school. This new friend kind of makes him feel better about himself. It's perfection. The second book that made me cry was The Accidental Text by Becky Monson. I also read this in February. It's this heartfelt book. Main character, whose name escapes me, is grieving the loss of her mother. And to help her cope with the loss of her mother, she has been texting her mother's old phone number. When something important happens or something funny happens, anything happens, she just has to tell her that she would want to tell her mom. She shoots off a text, all the while thinking that her dad has kept her mom's number and hasn't closed it. One day, one of her texts is answered. And the young man that answers her text is he just listens and asks her questions and lets her talk about her mom and how much she misses her mom. And they make this beautiful, beautiful friendship. And it's just wonderful. It is a romantic comedy. It's got a bunch of humor and it's really fun, but it's got a punch. Gets you in all the feels. Number 11 is a book that made me happy, and I chose two for this one as well. The first one is Nothing But the Truth by Avi. I read this in May, actually April and May. I read it with my 8th graders. The reason this book makes me so happy is that I read this in 8th grade and I loved it. And I finally, after years of being a teacher, have gotten the opportunity to share this book with another class of students. And they loved it. It sparked so many wonderful discussions. It was just a great reading experience for everybody involved. And I'm so glad that I finally got the opportunity to do that. So that's Nothing By the Truth by Avi, read in April and May. The second book that made me feel happy was The Mouse and the Motorcycle by Beverly Cleary. I read this in April because I was feeling a need for a little bit of nostalgia. I wanted to read a Beverly Cleary book because it was her birthday and she recently passed away. And this book gave the exact amount of nostalgia that I needed at that exact moment. It put a smile on my face because you have this mouse going around on this motorcycle doing all these antics, trying to save his new friend. It's just a beautiful story, a beautiful book, and I loved it. And it made me really happy. Number 12 is Your Most Beautiful Book Acquired. I don't actually have this book right now because I have been pushing it into as many people's hands as possible. This book I read in February as an e-galley, and then it was a Book of the Month pick in March, and I bought it. That is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. I loved this book, but I love this cover. We have this dark purple background, the shiny medicine bottle. We have the punch of green in that bug, and then those flowers for the sweetness. Oh, beautiful. Last but not least is a book you need to finish. The book that I want to finish this year is Game Changer by Donald Miller and Colby Sharp. I started this book when I was at a conference in February of 2019, and it got lost in all of my conference materials, and I didn't finish it. This is a nonfiction book about finding the book for every reader, and that is an absolute passion of mine. And I cannot believe that I let myself lose this book. So first I have to find it. Then I need to finish it. And I really want to finish it this summer. I'll have to start over because it's been a while. So there you have it. Those are my 13. Okay, those are the answers to those 13 questions. What do you think about the books that I talked about today? Anything you like? Anything you want to read? Anything at all? Let me know down in the comments. I love reading your comments. I love chatting with you. Until next time, happy reading. Bye.